Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this January 2024 Schools Forum. I hope you're all well, despite the very chilly weather outside. My name is Alison Coleman. We will be electing chair and vice chair shortly, but before that, while I'm currently in the chair, I'll run through who is present in the meeting. We have with us Amanda Havers, Andrew Berry, Angelo Gajucci, Anne-Marie Price, Christina Lewis, Emma White, Gemma Morgan, Gordon Jones, Jacqueline Dyer, Julia Granger, Kate Cedar-Nichols, Linda Walker, Michael Quinton, Robert Lenko, Ros Somerville, Ruth Coleman, Sonia Harben, Stephen Dewing, Sue Prickett, Tanya Ogunbayi, Teresa Spilling, and somebody with the initials MG. Could you just pipe up and announce yourself, please? I'm sorry, I can't spot the who it is from the initials. MG, are you with us? Obviously logged on, but not able to tell me who's here. So welcome to the meeting. Just a reminder, while people are presenting, if you could please keep your cameras off and your microphones on mute. But please, if you're engaging in asking a question or want to raise a point, then please feel free to turn on your cameras as well as your microphones at that point. I'll just run through the apologies for absence that we've received. So we have had apologies from Rachel Hood, Councillor Chris Chambers, Elle Mayhew, Andrew Robinson, Matthew Ferrier, Daniel Jones, Rowena Mackey, as well as her substitute, John Tunnelly, and Linda Walker is attending in their place. And I've had one more come in, which is also from Angela Ransby. So they're all the apologies that we've received for today. And so that covers that agenda item. So moving on to the term of office item, and I was due to hand over now to Adrian, but I can't see that Adrian has managed to get onto the call. I know there's been some issues with Teams this morning, and I don't know whether he's one of the people having a problem with that. Sonia, I might have to put you on the spot, or Teresa, and hand over to one of you at this point, because I can't chair this item.
I'll give it a go. Sorry, Alison. I'm also having a few IT issues, so I'm sure that will be what's troubling Adrian, unless Teresa's got any other news.
I know I'd messaged Teresa just before the meeting, and she said she knew Adrian was trying to log on, but she assumed he must have been in another call at that point, but he still hasn't appeared, so I can only assume he's got IT issues, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'll happily try and take over this point. So yes, at the moment the position is that Alison and Robert have served their 2 years of office, so we need to re-elect a new chair and vice chair. So I think the first thing we have to ask is if there are any nominations for chair. And Teresa has said no other nominations have been received. So has there actually been any nominations received, Teresa, at all?
No, Sonia. So far to date, we sent one out to members asking if they would like to actually stand to be a chair or vice chair, and we did get a few come back, and they did say that from that they had no nominations, but they were more than happy for Alison and Robert to stand again. We have got 2 votes ready also, so we've got 2 separate votes, one for the chair and one for the vice chair. So happy to launch those when you're ready.
Okay, then. So I think what I should do, first of all, out of courtesy, is ask Alison if she's happy to restand as chair.
As long as everybody else is sure that nobody else wants to take over. If that is the case, then I'm willing to stand again, Sonia. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's very good news for all of us. I'm really sure that it will be the same for everybody on the call. So, Teresa, I'm assuming you've got that as a vote ready to go?
We have indeed. So I'll just get Jacqueline to launch that for me. Thank you.
And I'm assuming this is for all Schools Forum members to vote on.
Yes, that is indeed, yes.
Thank you. So if you'd all like to submit your votes. Teresa, I don't see the results of the poll, or I can't see them at the moment.
Okay, I can't see voting.
It's just updating on my system at the moment. So far, it looks to be 10 responses.
Fabulous. Oh, yes, I can see it now.
Yes, now we're, oh, yep, that's slowly going up. Now we're 13 at the moment.
Okay. So I think that might be it. So on that basis, with 14 votes and 100%, Alison, I'm really pleased to say that you have been re-elected chair of Schools Forum. I'm happy to hand back to you to do the vice chair, or if you want me to continue to do the vice chair.
I'll take over if you like, Sonia. I don't mind if you'd like me to.
I can
as Adrian isn't
now.
here.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm very pleased to welcome you back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I'll continue to try and do as good a job in the chair as I can. I'm not perfect, but I'll do my best. So we now move on to the election of vice chair. And as Teresa has mentioned, Robert has very kindly put himself forward as a candidate. Would anybody else like to put themselves forward? Anne-Marie, I'll hand over to you. Have you got a question, or would you like to put yourself forward, Anne-Marie? We can't hear you, Anne-Marie. You're on mute.
Sorry, I just pressed something I shouldn't have done.
Did you want to raise a point at this?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Robert, I have to say you've been you've stood in for me a time or two when I haven't been able to be here, and you've been a very helpful person to know behind the scenes. So I'm very happy that you're putting yourself forward again. But at the moment, it doesn't look like anybody else has put themselves forward. So Jacqueline, if you could kindly load the vote, please, so that we could officially see if people are happy to agree to Robert being vice chair for the next 2 years. If Schools Forum members could vote now, please.
Thank you, Alison. Congratulations to you. And vice chair is a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Absolutely. That's the toughest job, isn't it, Robert? Okay, thank you very much. We've had 14 responses and everybody's in favour as Robert being vice chair. So thank you, Robert. Happy to record that you have been elected for 2 years as vice chair of the Suffolk Schools Forum. Thank you all very much. That concludes that item on the agenda. So if we can now move to paper A, which is the minutes of our last meeting, please. I need to scroll back to the top again because I was further down. So that meeting was held on the 30th of November. If we could take it for accuracy and matters arising page by page, if you could shout out if there's anything you want to raise on each page as I go through, please. Page 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I've skipped past. Oh yes, bottom of 6, top of 7. Gemma, if you could just give us the update, please, on the actions you had, and then I'll come to you, Gordon.
Yes, of course, Alison. So I've responded to Robert. We had an email exchange about the data that he asked for, so I've shared that with Robert. And I will give an update on this in my section in a minute, but I will be bringing a paper with the autumn term data to the next forum as we're still doing the data analysis as we speak. But I'll discuss that in more detail with you shortly.
Yeah, with your item. Thank you, Gemma.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Gemma, from Robert, for your reply. Very swift and full. Thank you. Thanks,
Robert. Gordon, over to you.
Yes, perhaps I should have raised it outside the meeting, but the link to the high needs funding with Suffolk Learning didn't work for me. Whether I'm too close to the Essex border or what, I don't know, but I just got timed out on it. So if somebody outside the meeting could send me a link to that for future reference, okay?
Of course, I will. It could be put in the chat if it's easily accessible. Otherwise, we can circulate it through, along with the minutes, through Teresa, Gemma, one or the other. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat, Alison. Thank you.
Super. Thanks very much. Okay, and the rest of page 7. Anything else for anybody to raise there? Otherwise, thank you. I'll record those as an accurate reflection of our meeting in November. Thank you very much. So we're now moving on to paper B, which is the Early Years National Funding Formula paper. And Christina, I'll hand over to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the paper. It's that time of year again where we have to set the rates ready for implementation in April. I know that the sector are very keen to hear what the rates are going to be. So if we're able to agree it today, I will be publishing it this afternoon. But if you want me to do something different, then obviously that will take its time. I've gone through all the levels that we need to, including I consulted with our Providers Consultative Forum, 3 members of whom are also on Schools Forum and are present today. Very helpfully, this is democracy at work, because I did go with 2 proposals and the forum asked me to model something different. We then voted on it, and overwhelmingly they wanted the proposal that I'm putting forward today. So we are trying, as usual, to maximise what we pass through to providers. We are also implementing new entitlements during the course of this year. So there's a new entitlement for the children of 2-year-old children of working parents from April. And there's also the implementation of a funded offer for 9-month plus children of working parents from September, but we are setting that rate today as well, hopefully for implementation in September. So there's a lot of work for my service to do, an awful lot of work for the sector to do. So they need to know what their funding is going to be so they can start their business planning for the implementation. We're proposing to reduce the amount, the percentage again that the early years and childcare service retains, but because a difference is we could only before retain from the 3 and 4-year-old funding, but the DfE have changed that and we can retain an amount from all funding streams now. So until we know what take up is like, we can't know what that will mean in terms of monetary amount. So we will keep that under review and make adjustments in hopefully if we're able to. In favour of providers is what the adjustment would be if I'm able to do that. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, Christina. Robert, you've got your hand up. You're still on mute, Robert.
No, I'm getting there. It's just the screen has changed. It's been updated, so it's rather thrown me. It's all frightfully run. First of all, Christina, thank you for all that work. I just really wanted a little bit of explanation on your alternative options, probably because I'm a little bit slow. Can you just explain when it says in item 5 you can expand the offer to providers? It results in less being passed through to providers. I don't quite get my head around that. And then more supplements are introduced. What do you mean by more supplements? If you could just expand on that, because I don't quite understand the fine detail.
Of course, yeah.
Thank
so
you.
As I said, we've historically in the last few years we've retained 3.3%. Any local authority is allowed to retain up to 5%, which pays for our services that provide support and delivery mechanisms for the providers. So they do benefit from it, but they don't get directly the money. If we retained more, so we're proposing to retain 3% from this year onwards, but if we retained more, if we retained say the 5%, then that would mean I could expand my team and we could offer more to the providers. But the preference at the moment has been, because we're so lowly funded in Suffolk, to not do that and to pass as much as we can through, retaining just enough to meet our statutory duties. Does that cover that one, Robert? And then I'll go on to the other one. Okay. And the more supplements, the DfE does allow us to have more. We have to have a deprivation supplement and an inclusion fund that comes from the funded hours. But we could also have supplements for quality, for rurality, if we wanted to. But the consultative forum, all feel that would water down the base rate too much. And so they prefer that we only have the 2 supplements that we have to have, and we keep them at a minimum amount so that we still maximise the hourly rate and everybody benefits from that. Is that clarified?
Very logical, and explains exactly what I wanted. Thank you, Christina. Thank you.
Wendy, I'll bring you in now. Thank you.
Hello. I was just looking at the send rate, which seems completely paltry, and just wondered how that was, where that figure comes from, 0.3%, 0.4%. What's that based on? Is it going to actually enable settings to meet the needs of their SEND children?
Well, that is a small amount that is retained for an inclusion fund. An inclusion fund is only for emerging needs. If a setting has a child who's got, and we've got established need, they can apply for high needs funding as well, and they also can apply for the disability access fund on top as well. So the inclusion fund, actually, it's usually underspent, and I end up distributing it later in the year because it's only for children who's for a maximum of 2 terms. Whilst a provider is assessing what the child's needs are going to be, because it might be that they put a little bit extra speech and language support in, for example, and then it's not an ongoing issue, but that child needed a little bit of support for a term. Or if they've still got if the needs are still there after 2 terms, then it's right that they move on to high needs funding, because we've established that there is a more significant need.
That's lovely. Thank you for that explanation. That's really clarified it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? we want to raise? Can't see any other hands up. I think, Christina, it's really helpful. You've got such a good relationship with your consultative group that you're really working together with the sector to work out what the best of a worst option is, given how low the funding is in Suffolk. So I think that's really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I'm just giving anybody a chance to put a final hand up before I go to the vote. Okay, Jacqueline, if you could launch the vote, please. So all Schools Forum members, could you please let us know, do you agree to the funding rates for the early education entitlements existing and expansion for 24-25? If you could all vote now, please. Thank you. We've had 15 responses who are all in favour, Christina. So that's been agreed.
That's lovely. Thank you all very much. I will publish that later today then. And whilst I know providers won't be thrilled by the amounts, I'm sure they'll be glad that we've got agreement and they can start their planning. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks to you and your team and the sector for all they're doing. Thank you. So moving on now to paper C, which is the schools block funding submission paper. So hand over now to Mike. Mike, over to you. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Hopefully no Teams issues here. I was kicked out of a few meetings yesterday, so touch wood, everything remains okay this morning. So this paper really is just sort of an addition really to the paper that I presented at the 30th of November forum meeting, because obviously since then we've had all of the update to the DSG funding for 24-25. So I do tend to waffle on about schools funding in some of my papers, so I'll keep this quite brief. So if hopefully everyone's had a look at the paper, and I'll accept any questions or queries at the end. But I've added in a couple of tables to summarise the position for Suffolk for next year and the change that we've seen on those allocations. But if I just go down to point 7 in the paper, there has been some changes to the pupil numbers in Suffolk. So on the draft performer that I presented back in November, our pupil numbers were actually higher than what they are for 24-25. So as soon as we lose pupils in Suffolk, we actually lose funding. So you can see in the table on page 2 that overall we've seen a 1.7 million reduction in the funding that we've received into Suffolk. So this will have an impact on some of the modelling that I do for the 24-25 school budgets. If we just go down to the bullets below the table, you can see there's been some other sort of rejigging of the funding within the schools block. So some of the schools block factors have actually had some changes as well. So you can see that there's been an increase in deprivation, English as an additional language, mobility, and the low prior attainment factors. So by diverting more funding into this, I've just had to sort of balance the ARPU. We always use ARPU as a balancing number because we use all of the schools block factors as NFF prescribes as we follow it. So I tend not to touch any of those. I've just added in the recap again, but it's exactly the same as what was in the paper in November. So no changes since that paper. And then I have included in Annex A the draft APT, which will be submitted to the ESFA next week on Monday. I'm still waiting on a few bits on rates from the boroughs and districts, so there will be some slight changes, and that in turn can change minimum per pupil levels and also the MFG amounts as well. So there may be some sort of slight changes on what is in this paper. What we tend to do in Suffolk for LA schools is we look to get the toolkits and all the budget commentary out before the February half terms. That'll be the 16th of February for this year. Academies and the reps on forum today, please feel free to go into Suffolk Learning and go onto those tabs, because that information will be there for you to use before the SFA send out the information, usually before the end of February to yourselves. So you know, it's all helpful. The budget commentary sets out everything in a lot of detail, and that's academies can use that as well. So please do use that. And then just a bit at the end on the growth and falling roles fund. So we're going to keep the growth and the falling roles fund the same as the 23-24 levels. We will come back in the summer with the DSG outturn on what the growth and falling roles funds look like this year. I think we're going to have a slight underspend on the growth funding, just because there's been some delays with a few new school projects and some of the builds. and the falling roles, we are looking at a couple of cases at the moment with the infrastructure team. Stephen, I think you're on the call today. We are looking at that, and we'll get back to you in due course. But again, I think there'll be an underspend on the falling roles fund as well. So I think what we can do with any underspends on the growth and falling roles is that can be diverted back into schools block next year, so we can have a look at that and see what's best to utilise that funding. Other than that, I think that's it, and happy to take any questions or queries on the paper.
Anybody got any queries? Gordon, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Michael. Just a general query on the pupil numbers. What are the forecasts, say, for primary schools in the years, 1 to 24, 25, 25, 26? Are they continuing to decline as they are perhaps nationally?
I think, yeah, without having the information to hand, and this is something that can be shared and it can be an action, I think that the numbers in primary are actually falling. And although that sort of goes against some of the growth that we're seeing in some areas in the county, that's more about sort of housing and redistribution of people from sort of around the county. So what we're finding at the moment is rural schools are losing pupils, but it's in sort of Ipswich, Lowestoft, the bigger sort of urban centres where there are a need for increase in places. But overall, at the primary level, I think the trend is for those numbers to reduce over the coming years. But I can get some firm information on that to you, Gordon, and share with other forum members as well.
Yeah, that'd be useful, especially these specific impact in some rural areas, because of declining numbers.
Yes,
and the impact of the school.
Yeah, of course, and I'm sure the infrastructure team, I think they work on all the pupil projections sort of around the spring into the sort of early part of the summer. What I'm going to do is, for the local authority schools, our strategic planning needs to be back into us before the end of May. That might going to be slightly different for academies, obviously. But what I'm trying to do is that the pupil projection numbers normally comes out in sort of June time. So I want to try and get that data out before the strategic planning, so schools have that in place. Because as we know, it's very difficult to plan at the moment for schools with the uncertainty around the funding and the low levels that we do get in Suffolk. But yeah, I'll get something out to yourself, Gordon, and forum members as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else got any queries or comments? While I'm just giving you a minute to think about it, I just again thank you and your team, Mike. I know a lot of work has to go into pulling all these numbers together and look at what the impact is on all the schools in Suffolk. So, and your big piece of work coming up to get all the separate school packs ready by the 16th of February. So best wishes to you and the team for that piece of work. Okay, I gave everybody a moment to put their hand up. Nobody has. So thanks, Mike. Thanks for that paper. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
Okay, so that is paper D, and over to Gemma. Thank you, Gemma. Welcome today.
Hi, Alison. Thank you, everybody. So I haven't submitted a paper for this forum because there is many things that I need to cover that I will do at the next forum, and I thought I'd just give a little bit of an overview of where we are with things so everybody's aware of where we're up to. Just to track back to what Gordon was saying earlier, the link isn't working, Gordon, you're absolutely right, and I can't access it either. So I'll look into that, find out what's going on. Then I'll liaise with Teresa and make sure everybody gets a link to the the Suffolk Learning website. I don't know why it's not working. I think it might be a wider problem than just our link, so we shall see. Okay, so what I'm going to do at the next meeting is I'm going to come to and speak to you about the autumn term moderation. Now, I've got some of the data, but we haven't analysed all of the data yet. We had 1,600 requests for band changes within our mainstream settings. So the moderation, as you can imagine, took slightly longer than we expected. We did manage to get all payments out by the end of the calendar year. And now we've started in the last 2 weeks looking at the data. Once we have that, I'll share it in a document so that you can all look at it and see the comparisons year on year as to where we are with the banding values. How many of each band are in each setting and within each year group. Joy Settle in my service will do a full analysis of all of that, and I'll be able to provide that to you at the next forum. So that's the autumn term moderation. Obviously, by the time we meet again, I'll have some data on the spring term moderation as well, so I can bring all of that to the meeting. I also wanted to just raise that at the last meeting, it was suggested that some mitigation work was undertaken. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I have started that work with High Needs Working Group. We met before Christmas and started looking at what we felt could be steps towards mitigation. There was a lot of discussion regarding EHCPs, the information within an EHCP, and what I need to do is do some more work on that, work with my other colleagues within the inclusion service and with Ros Somerville to look at how we're developing moving forward. And there are changes coming to the inclusion service, and that will address some of the mitigation discussions that we've been having. But I will carry those conversations on with the High Needs Working Group, and obviously we'll bring back any feedback to this meeting in the future. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was the Delivering Better Value programme and the deficit management plan. So that was the annex that has been attached to the papers. Sorry, it was a bit late. I was just finalising it. We've updated it again since we've issued that document. We're updating it constantly, and we're working with SIPFA, who are an accounting organisation, to support us with our predictions and whether what we're producing within that plan is reflective of the position and what things are going to look like moving forward. So currently we're updating the deficit management plan again. We're sharing that with SIPFA, which I'm going to be doing next week, and they'll obviously continue to give us feedback on that, and we'll feed into the DFE to discuss with them our financial position and what that's looking like moving forward. And as you all know, that's not just us, it's a number of local authorities. At least half of the local authorities in the country are in some kind of financial support situation from the DFE, so they're getting that, either the Delivering Better Value or the safety valve programme. So it's not just us that's getting this special treatment. But that, again, I will keep, every time we update it, we'll share it with you. There's no reason why we can't, we're happy to share that. Mike Quinton's doing a fabulous job supporting me with getting all the data and the figures right. So we're getting there with that. And like I say, every one of these meetings, we will share the most up-to-date version. And if anybody wants to see it in between the meetings, then I'm happy to share the work that we're doing with SIPFA. So we're quite open and transparent about what we're doing there. So the other item that I was just going to touch on was spend within the high needs block. We're approaching the end of the financial year. We do continue to have a large deficit within the budget. We have seen an increase in spend recently on our independent and our bespoke provision. However, we don't think our end of year position will alter because of that, because we've had some other movements within other budgets within the inclusion service. So we're still predicting the same level of approximately 25 to 26 million pounds overspent by the end of this financial year, and that will bring our overall deficit to 50 million as a cumulative figure. But again, once we've closed this year's financial systems, then obviously I can put that all into a paper and let everybody know what the position is, but it hasn't changed significantly since the last paper that I shared with the group. So I haven't produced another one yet, but we'll do for I think it's May, the next meeting, isn't it, Alison? So I appreciate that was quite a lot of information in one in one go, but I'm happy to take any questions that anybody's got.
Robert, thank you.
I was just going to say, well done, Gemma. Thank you. That's
Thank you.
amazing. And just out of interest, are you fully staffed, your team and everybody there?
Not across the whole of the inclusion service. No, I mean,
No.
we've got quite a few vacancies within our family services team. We've got some vacancies within our provider services team as well. So we have moments of being fully staffed, but not at the moment. We're working on it though, Robert.
Well, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Gordon, thank you.
Thank you for that, Gemma, and I will preface my comments with I don't underestimate the challenge that you and your colleagues have. I really don't. It certainly is not getting any easier, and I can see that. And my next comments might be sort of misguided because I haven't had access to the high needs, funding bit. So
yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, but so with that aside, and this is just an observation. It's a really detailed and comprehensive, pretty large spreadsheet, and I'm sure an absolute massive amount of work goes into that. But it's set up sort of to manage the overspend, but actually it seems to be more reporting on the overspend rather than what I would call managing it. And maybe that's a fault of the DFE and the design of their spreadsheet. With the accumulated deficit is forecast in the next 2 years to increase 118%. From the just under the 52 million to just under 113 million, and it also states somewhere in there that the keeping the deficit off the balance sheet is only allowed until the end of 2026.
Yeah.
Now, if that should change and it needs to come on to the balance sheet, I don't know the exact figures, but it would put Suffolk County Council jolly close, I would have thought, to a deficit position. And that doesn't seem to be being addressed. And I'm sure that's a fault of the system. But I just sort of, if you like, raise my concerns of that, the position that we, and I would suggest a considerable number of other local authorities find themselves in.
Absolutely. And Gordon, we've shared similar feedback with the DFE regarding the deficit management plan, because it's not a recovery plan. No. We have put in, we've got an updated version, and I'm happy to share that again. I can ask Teresa to share it with the minutes, which is going to sit for next week, where we have put in more data around our cost avoidance with our independent non-maintained, because where we've created 800 spaces within the local offer, approximately 800 spaces within the local offer. There are 800 places where a child hasn't had to go to an independent setting. So there is some cost avoidance, which I've now asked SIPFA to include within the spreadsheet, and I've worked on that with them to try and demonstrate that we're not seeing a saving in the because of our SEND capital plan. We're seeing cost avoidance, and it's not. Yeah. It's not the same. So we're not recovering that money. We're just avoiding spending it. So
if you hadn't up the offer, the deficit would have been even greater than
absolutely.
Than
and
it is.
Yeah, and we've demonstrated that by some figures we've given them around unmitigated spend as well. So I completely agree with you, Gordon, but there is no recovery. We can't recover. We worked with Newton as part of the Delivering Better Value. We sat with Newton and we talked about all the things that Suffolk does and all the things that they've discussed with other local authorities to do to save money. And we were in a position where we were already doing a lot of those things. Yeah. And we got to a point where Newton couldn't find a place to make those savings. So we've got other than the SEND capital programme, we can't demonstrate in that document that we're making any cost avoidance or recovery of that funding. And I think, Sonia, you've probably got your hand up for this point, but I think there has been some more challenge back to central government regarding the money being held against our reserves, because you're right, if the rules change in 2026, we won't have enough money to hold against the reserves for the high needs block.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Gordon.
Sonia, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to absolutely, Gemma, you're right. I was going to come in on that, and the deficit position, unless the statutory override is changed, and I think we're hearing noises that it probably will, because as you said, we're not the only ones. I think and I was in a meeting with regional colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and even those that have never had a deficit before, they're now tipping into it in the way that we are, where the sort of the overspends are sort of 10 million, 15 million, which are the sort of things that we saw a year ago and 2 years ago. They're now starting to dip into that as well. So We will be, I think the other thing to sort of remember is obviously the impact of having that deficit is on our cash flow, because we've got this big deficit in our, so it has other implications for the council. The new placements, absolutely yes, they are cost avoid within the DSG block, but the home to school travel costs has to be funded from core funding. So that's why our send transport costs have gone up as well. And in the same way, and I say this from sort of also looking at the children and care budgets, the market is just completely broken. So it's a combination of the market and demand, and our funding, particularly within the DSG high needs block, just doesn't come anywhere close. So for next year, our DSG income is going up by 5 million. And you can just see the full year impact of the new moderations in the autumn term alone is a 5 million full year impact. So our funding is we're not going to be able to cover the costs we've currently got, and the increase in demand over and above the moderated changes to bandings in the autumn term. But I would just like to sort of reiterate the thanks and amazing work that Gemma and Ros and the team do in, the issue comes down to our funding, not our spending. And I think that's how I'm always sort of, my narrative is on that I think there is, in terms of from the educational provision placements and ensuring that children are in the most appropriate placement they can be. I know that the service is doing everything they can. It's just the funding's not there to support what the demand is in Suffolk.
Yes, I was not making any criticism.
No, I know you weren't.
I was just trying
reiterating the point. Absolutely,
absolutely.
You're absolutely right that by 2026, if the override isn't overridden again, isn't changed statutorily, we would not have the reserves to cover that.
And let's be honest, there's really no logic to the override other than just kicking the problem into a bit of longer grass. Okay.
Absolutely, and ours is, and if you remember that ours is not the worst deficit. What I would say is that our reserve position isn't great in Suffolk, so that's why that might be slightly more. We're in a more precarious position overall than others. But I think it was Hampshire. Their DSG deficit is expected to be about £500 million by then. So
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia.
Difficult position. Wendy, thank you for your patience. Bring you in now.
I just wanted to speak on behalf of the little people on the ground for who this funding is very important, and just to say that all of us trying to provide that provision are really struggling to do that with the funding. So even though we've got this huge deficit, we need more, and I don't know how we continue to do it really, but I just want people to realise that it is really, really tough meeting the needs of these youngsters. That's just.
I know, I'm one of the ones who's long in the tooth around this table. I've been a governor since 1999, and just the increase in the number of pupils needing additional support has just increased exponentially during that time. It really is all about the needs of the children and the fact that the funding hasn't kept pace with it. Yeah, I completely agree with that view all round. Is there anybody else who'd like to make any comments or raise any questions on this? Okay, thank you very much. So we've just moving on now. I'm not aware that there's any other business to raise today, so I can move on past that. And just for information, we have paper E, the forward agenda. You can see on there dates for the rest of the year. As Sonia mentioned, our next meeting is in May, which is on the 9th. And we've got the key different agenda items for the rest of the year are on the forward agenda. But if ever there is anything finance related that you feel that we ought to be discussing here at Schools Forum, then do please feel free to contact us and let us know if there's other topics that you feel we need to have a conversation about. So unless anybody has got anything else that they wish to raise today, and I can't see any hands up, I will thank you all very much, and I'll close the meeting. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thanks both. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.